The recording has started.
Aloha, everybody, and welcome to Alien Contact Organization on Aquarium Radio. I'm your host, Janet Carol Lessin, and I have my co-host here, Andrew Aloha. And today we're interviewing Bruce Cornet, and he's been on our show several times. He's a researcher and author, and he has a new book called Unconventional Aerial Phenomena in the Hudson and Wallkill River Valley of New York. And his book is based on 11 years of field research in this Wallkill River Valley of New York State, which involved the photographing and videotaping of as many as 140 unconventional craft. They're called ETVs and ARVs, so explain what that means, many of which put on deliberate performances for Cornet cameras. And he has time exposures or photographic canvases and videos. The images reveal electromagnetic plasma and gravity-altering properties unknown for declassified or disclosed human-built aircraft. And there's photographic and video evidence for the following, like lights flashing in places where conventional aircraft do not have a physical structure, and headlights out of the wingtips for their least effective landing, etc. He has documented. I've got a page up on aquariumradio.com, and I invite you to go over and check that out for Bruce Cornet. There's lots of pictures there. And first I'm going to bring on my guest host, or my co-host. We're going to be doing this series on an ongoing basis, and his name is Andrew Aloha. And I'm going to do a sound check with him, and then I'll bring on our guest. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Aloha.
Okay,
Yes.
You're coming in loud and clear. Do you want to tell our audience who you are, a little bit about yourself? Who are you, Andrew Aloha?
I'm Andrew Aloha. I've also, what do you call it, an ex-Blog Talk radio show host. I don't like to use that word, but anyhow, I've done Blog Talk radio shows for a number of years, 8, 9 years. I went on hiatus a few months ago, and I'm back. So I've been talking with you, and we got some shows going on. So you and I are going to be hosting a new show called The Ascension Experts, starting. I don't remember. It's not going to be next Friday because you got something else going on, right?
Right. It's starting the 9th of August. I have people booked for Experiencers Network through the 2nd. And so the 9th will be our first show on Ascension Experts. And so we're looking for guests. If you want to contact me, you can write to me at aquariumradio@gmail. And Andrew, what's your contact for people if they want to be on one of our shows?
Yeah, they can contact me. They can Google me, Andrew Aloha. They can find me anywhere. They can go to my website, spiritualimageproductions.com. You can contact me directly by phone, 928-310-1700, and go from there.
Okay. Well, I'm going to bring on Bruce and welcome him to the show. 1 second. It takes a little delay when you click on the button. Aloha, Bruce. Aloha, welcome to the show. Bruce
Janet.
Cornet.
And Andrew.
Welcome back. Yeah.
Thank you.
So you have a new book, and I have a picture of it up on the website. Tell us a little bit more about this book. How long did it take you to get it together, to write it?
Well, the actual original research took 11 years between 1992 and 2003, but there's been a lot of work trying to understand what has been going on. Since then, I created many websites for my sightings, but realized that very few people want to search through those websites. They needed something that is they can put in their hand and they can flip through and they can read different sections or chapters of a book. And so it's been last year and a half that I've been writing this book, finishing it up.
Excellent. So we're going to have you tell us about yourself, about your work, for about 15 minutes or so here, and then the three of us will go in an exchange of information. So take it away and tell us about you, your research, and your book.
Okay, so you want me to give an extended bio or just a sort of an abstract of it?
I guess an abstract, not a BK, but a bio that's relative to your research as a ufologist.
Right. On your webpage, you have my abstract or a bio listed there for those who are interested. My education and career has been in biology and geology and paleobotany, and I worked for 11 years with the oil industries, different companies, down in Houston, Texas. And then I met this woman, and we ended up moving to New York so that I could work with a colleague of mine at Columbia University, Dr. Paul Olson, and I worked there from approximately 1988 to 2003, and it was about that time, 1992, that I was introduced to the what is commonly called the UFO phenomenon, but I like to use the term UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon, which is now more commonly used, although most people think of it as UFOs. And because this was in my backyard, literally, when we lived in Middletown, New York, and there was a book written on it, this area, by Dr. Ellen Crystal, that was published in 1991. It was a perfect segue into the paranormal phenomenon. I was amazed that this type of subject was getting prime time billing on television with Intruders that came out, I believe, in 1992, and I saw that, and as an academic scientist, I was rather shocked that this subject matter was getting any credibility or recognition at all. And so I contacted Ellen Crystal, and she told me about the Sky Group the Sky Watchers that she went out with into the area right next to where I lived. After I read her book, I was really shocked to find out that I was living right in a UAP hotspot area, or within 10 miles of Pine Bush. And Ellen Crystal had brought to the country's attention, the world's attention, and with her book Silent Invasion, that there was a lot of UAP activity taking place in this one area south and east of Pine Bush, New York. And as a scientist, being curious, I wanted to know more about it. And through her, she introduced me to all the things that were going on out in the field. And I realized that this was a great opportunity to document this. And because I was a photographer and a scientist and had access to different types of instruments, such as a magnetometer, I took it upon myself to go out into the field and start a 24-mile magnetic survey. Ellen Crystal had claimed in her book, with all of the sightings that she had in this area, that there was an underground alien base. And I said, well, this can be documented. Why isn't anybody out there checking this out? And with a proton magnetometer, I went out and did a 24 square mile survey, and as well as a geological survey of the surface to find out what was going on and why this area was such a hot spot. And that got me so involved in there that basically my situation changed relative to Lamont Doherty, where I was working. The project I had been working on there with Olson and Kent had been completed. I was the well site geologist for one of the most expensive and extensive coring projects in the country's history, and as the well site geologist. And when that finished up, I wanted to go into the studying the UAP. Of course, that meant that I had to separate from Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory because they didn't like the idea that I was studying this phenomena, mainly because the National Science Foundation, which provides most of the financial support to their research, frowned upon the paranormal. They were as much under the thumb of the CIA and FBI and government to keep the UFO or UAP subject suppressed and covered up. So I went out on my own and started taking photographs with Ellen and the groups of people she attracted. And the craft would come to us in the field, fly over us, fly around us, put on performances in the night sky with their plasma lights. And there were many different types of craft that we saw, everything from just the balls of brilliant plasma light to invisible craft with multiple lights on them to structured craft that we could actually see when they flew over us, triangles and diamond-shaped craft. And then perhaps the most outrageous were the conventional type airframes that they had converted or created to look like our conventional airplanes, such as a Boeing 707 or a DC-9. And I was followed along the highways by these UAP that resembled conventional aircraft. The only problem is that they were flying well below stall speed. They were I was keeping up with them at 45 to 50 miles an hour, driving on country roads, and they had absolutely no external engines on them, and they didn't have any windows on them. And I actually have photographs taken of a cigar-shaped craft that was just coming up over a ridge that I got a good photograph, a time exposure of it. Then I went to take the second time exposure, and lo and behold, this cigar-shaped object unfolded wings and tail stabilizers and turned on sound. And I'll never forget being with Ellen and several other people that we were sky watching there at the on West Searsville Road, and one of the guys said, "No way!" And he goes running towards his car, and Ellen said, "Come on, we're going to follow him. So grab your camera." So I grabbed my camera and tripod and jumped into the back seat of her car, and we went speeding down these country road. And I really had questions at that particular time as to what did I actually get involved in here. These people are crazy, going 50 miles an hour on a winding country road at night. And we could see that the lead car was chasing this aircraft that was flying just ahead of him, and he was catching up to it. And then suddenly this object stopped. We stopped, got out, and saw it turn around on a dime and come back and fly over us. Since there was a cloud cover and a full moon behind it, we could see the silhouette or shape of this object, and it looked just like a Boeing 707, but it had no engines on it, and it went back in the direction it had come. Obviously, this was not a conventional aircraft. The Boeing 707s can't stop and turn around 180 degrees.
Right.
So I got pictures of all of that and realized that I needed to document this stuff. And year after year, I'd go out, and for the first 3 or 4 years, I was getting many, many sightings, Janet, many sightings.
Mm-hmm.
And I was with other witnesses. I've documented this in an appendix online. That is an appendix that you can find the URL to in my book. And I believe you put it on on your website. They can find it there too, in which I list numerically and in sequential order by date, by time, by location, and a brief description of the event, and list the witnesses, and then show the photographs that were taken or frames from videos of what we saw. So it's a very comprehensive 300-plus page document that details all of the material that's in my book, but it's in color. Unfortunately, my book, when it came out, because it's a KDP publication, is all in black and white, and most publishers don't like to publish something with a lot of color pictures in it. Fortunately, there's the Kindle version, which you can get, and all of the pictures are in color in the Kindle version, and it's a lot less expensive to buy that and view that publication, that version. So,
right. That's interesting. Yeah, I guess it costs a lot for them to print colors, but the Kindle is just all images, so you can see. You might want to get both.
Right.
You can have one that you carry with you, and
yeah, it not only costs a lot to print it, but it would cost the purchaser a lot of money too. My book is 400-plus pages long, and it's chock full of data and images. And you can get a pretty good idea of all of what I'm trying to document or what I have documented just by those black and white images. But it's always nice to see them in color, especially when the lights are different colors.
Yeah, sounds exciting. So your book is out now and it's ready. How do they get your book? Is it on Amazon, Kindle?
Yes. Just go to Amazon and Google Bruce Cornet or Dr. Bruce Cornet, or they can Google unconventional aerial phenomena, and they'll find it that way too.
Find it that way. Okay, and then we have a lot to cover. Andrew, do you have any questions for Bruce?
Yeah, the lights, are they green, yellow, red, blue? Or there are other colors in there as well?
Well, most of the lights that we saw were white or yellowish white, or sometimes orange white. But then they would have distinctive red and green lights that they try to mimic. In fact, since this underground base, which I did document very clearly, is right in the same valley as military installations, and we have both commercial and military aircraft flying over the area constantly. They had to blend in with the conventional aircraft so that they employed camouflage. And instead of having just an unidentified light flying around various colors, they actually flew structured craft, or at least visually they appeared to be structured. The black triangles were slightly, they were not all the standard triangle that we see in the news, but they are slightly different types, and I give drawings of what they look like in my book. And then you have the big diamond-shaped craft, which was about the size of a 747, and that craft was quite spectacular in terms of what it could do. It looked like, I call it the manta ray, and it could retract its tail and become a triangle, or it extend its tail and become, look like the fish, the shark, the manta ray. And it had these two brilliant lights on its outboard port and starboard side, and then it had other lights up in front, but it did not have any elongate fuselage like that of a conventional aircraft. And that object or the ship could stop and hover. It could produce all kinds of sounds, jet-like sounds and non-jet-like sounds. And it performed aerial maneuvers in the night sky, which I caught on my time exposures, and those images are in my book. And so I do a detailed comparison of the light configurations on these craft and compare them to conventional aircraft to show that they are trying to mimic the conventional aircraft. And that got me into trouble with the skeptics early on, because they were simply saying, well, how do we know it's not a conventional aircraft? And that's where why I took time exposures in order to show the the flight paths of these craft, which was not typical FAA-approved flight paths, and they were always flying well below the minimum altitude for the established by the FAA for commercial airlines and military aircraft. Have to be at least 1,000 and sometimes 1,500 feet above the ground. And most of these craft, I could suspect that they were not your conventional aircraft when they were only 500 to 300 feet above the ground, or flying right at treetop level. And even military pilots and stunt pilots, they would be so foolish to try to fly that low to the ground at night over populated areas. So they would produce sounds that people, when they heard the sound, they'd say, that's just a jet engine. That's just a jet, conventional aircraft. Yet when I recorded those sounds and analyzed them through a frequency spectrogram, they were completely synthetic, composed of 10 to 12 individual frequencies that paralleled one another. And they also exhibited a phenomenon that is now being used to indicate that you have metamaterial anti-gravity hulls on these craft, and that's what I dubbed reverse Doppler. In other words, a Doppler, a normal Doppler, a sound that you hear when a sound source is coming towards you, is the frequency will increase, rise higher and higher, and then when it passes you and moves away, the frequency will decrease lower and lower. But with all of these craft, without exception, their sounds would decrease on approach and increase on departure. Quite the opposite. And it's only been recently, over the last 20 years, that my work has been recognized by theoretical physicists as the smoking gun for non-human technology. So with all of this new information released by the Navy and Pentagon on the Tic Tac and the gimbal craft that were imaged by fighter pilots over the ocean, we have a lot of new information that shows that these craft have unconventional propulsion systems, and that they are completely separate. What their crews inside cannot possibly experience inertia or gravity because if they do have biological EBEs inside, they would not survive the extreme acceleration and right angle turns that these craft make.
Well, the extraterrestrials, though, have that ability to survive those, because they do it all the time. So that would be, if they're doing these types of maneuvers that humans can't do, then they would probably be part of the evidence that these are extraterrestrials. So they do those types of maneuvers all the time.
Right. Well, one of my objectives, Janet and Andrew, was to find out why are they underground. I mean, I have actual photographs of them coming out of the ground and going into the ground, going right straight through forest and disappearing below ground. And we don't have aircraft or technology capable of doing that. And Ellen Crystal, in her book, was in the field one time near where all this activity is happening. And she said a huge tunnel opened up right in front of her. It's as if the rock was spread apart and to create this tunnel that went deep down. And she said a warm air came rushing out of this tunnel, and then she saw it close up. So there was no question in her mind that there was an underground base there. And I wondered why the manta ray had its headlights, its landing lights, if this was a conventional aircraft, at the lateral extremities of this diamond-shaped object. And it suddenly became I realized that if these craft were getting into their underground bases through tunnels that would be artificially opened up, they would need landing lights on the perimeter of the craft so that they could see the walls of the tunnel and not crash into the sides of the tunnel as they were going into their underground base. Clearly, lights at the wingtips of a conventional aircraft do pilots no good if they're sitting in the flight deck that is at the front of in the middle of the airplane, and those lights would not illuminate the landing strip as they are coming in for a landing. So what good would the lights out at the wingtips be in it? And that is one thing that conventional aircraft do not have. They do not have large, brilliant headlights that can rotate at the lateral extremities of airplanes.
Right. So now you see a lot of different crafts that you've cataloged them.
Yes, they've all been cataloged. I give case after case after case. Remember, I said it that in Appendix 1, I itemize 141 different sightings over an 11-year period. And so people can actually see the amount of information there. But another question that comes up is why was I given all of this information? I mean, when Ellen Crystal started it all with her book, and when she went out into the field, all of these craft would come around her and follow her around and put on shows for her and her Skywatch group. But it wasn't until I got involved that I started taking regular time exposures with cameras mounted on tripods, and she started doing the same thing, and they began to put on deliberate performances in front of our cameras. So they knew what we were thinking, they knew what we were doing, and they were giving this incredible information about the flight capabilities of their machines. And so, it was, the big question becomes, was this part of an ET disclosure or not?
Right.
I mean,
so,
Bruce.
Yeah, let's Andrew ask the question. Go ahead.
Bruce, so let me see if I get this straight. You're saying that these ships or these saucers or these planes or these vehicles or these crafts were shape-shifting. They actually shape-shifted? Is that what I hear you saying?
They could shape-shift, yes. The star-shape was going to unfold wings and tail stabilizers and then fold them back up. The manta ray could retract its tail and become a triangle. And those are the things that we did document, okay? And the reason for having all the different light patterns on that resembled the navigation lights on conventional aircraft at night was so that they could fit in with the air traffic that flew over the valley there. And people would not suspect anything unusual. They would see something that would have lights at night, and they would wonder if it's a plane, and they might think it's flying a little bit too low to be a plane, but then they would hear the sound of it, and it sounded like a jet engine, and they would immediately think, okay, it's just a jet, nothing more. And I persisted with my taking time exposures and recording their sounds, and it's through that information, which I document in my book, that I was able to show that these craft really are not anything that we are making, in our aerospace industry. We don't have them. The closest thing we have are the black triangles, and we know now that the Skunk Works, Lockheed Martin, does build some of these triangles, and I've heard recently that there are advanced types that are even more capable than the TR-3B. And one of the things that the CIA wanted to do was to get people to think that they are alien reproduction vehicles, such as the TR-3B,
right,
which are based in part on recovered and reverse engineered alien craft. they wanted us to think that all of these things that we're seeing out there in Pine Bush were alien, and none of it was a military hardware. And in that, one of the things that we had done back on the 17th of May, 1997, there were three of us went out there into one of our favorite localities, and the Black Triangle put on a show for us, which was captured on two camcorders and on a SLR with time exposures. It was quite extraordinary. It's on not only discussed in my book, but there are web pages that you can go to, and you can actually see one of the videos of the performance of this craft. And after we had recorded that, my friend, who was a Navy veteran, was told by one of his other veteran friends that he had been told to tell us that that was an authorized performance by the Lockheed Martin TR-3. So you can actually see the performance of that.
I heard that the TR-3B and the other one, TR-11 or something, which is the Phoenix Place one, they are reverse engineered, but they are in cooperation with the extraterrestrial. There's like 4 species that we have treaties with, and we developed technology with them. Let me see if I get them. It's the Colloites, the Anunnaki, one of the gray beings, and one of the reptilian species. I think that's what the 4 there were. And
well, that's one of the things.
Go ahead.
Janet, in my book, in my conclusion, this was a problem that I had trying to understand why these things were flying around, why they were so common in the area, and why the military was denying that they were even there, even though we discovered through various sources that they were monitoring everything there. And this underground base, it may be extremely extensive. I mean, it may run all the way up the valley over on to the east side of the Hudson River. And I saw and documented with a friend the manta ray coming out of an underground base there near Salt Point, New York, and I discussed that in my book as well. So, and he said since he lived there with his parents, he's seen hatch doors open up in the neighboring fields of horse farms, and people climb out and then close the hatches. And he's seen these trucks go down these small roads into a ravine that is, difficult to get to, and that is where we saw the manta ray come out from underground. And so he thought that all of this was one of our bases, and that these craft were our craft. And so the question is, are some of these craft literally a hybrid between, the alien ETVs and the human ARVs? And this would support your idea that there is this cooperation going on, and that they really are not extraterrestrials anymore. They've been living on Earth for a long, long time, and so they are more likely our neighbors rather than non-Earth beings. I mean,
I have like Joanne Richards. I've had a lot of secret space people, but Joanne Richards been on the show, and a lot of them say that there's a whole tunnel of everywhere. There's an underground bases, and some of them are extraterrestrial, and so they have like their own ports here. They can come and go independent of any of our military governments, so there's some kind of treaties going on that we're not aware of that are, we have this trade going on. But I was at my conference in October at this Stargate to the Cosmos. I had all these secret space tourism people, and it was just mind-boggling what's really going on. And then in my own life, when in the 80s, I worked for Federated Investors, and they have underground storage of their documents, because these are all investment documents, right? And so I was working, getting everything together, and they said, "Do you want to go see the mines?" And I said, "Sure." They said, "Yeah, we did all kinds of things to treat their employees." So they had this special van, and there was about 6 or 7 of us, and they put this up north in Pennsylvania. So we're talking about that area that you're talking about up there, somewhere north towards the east. Don't know exactly where it was because I was in the back of the van and I was just being driven. It's just that I don't pay attention. It's like, okay, just take me there. But when we were there, the facility was huge. And it very well could be, it could go, it could have a public access, but there were areas that said you can't go there, can't go there, can't go there. And we couldn't walk. It was so huge. They had us on a little golf cart and they were zooming us around to show us all the things. And they let us into certain places. And I was thinking, oh, these are all over the place. I had heard about them, and they're just everywhere. And then I was in the underground installation at Johnson Atoll. So I've been in 2 underground installations, and they're absolutely ginormous. If extraterrestrials can take humans through walls, why can't they just take craft through walls? They know how to, I guess, manipulate molecules, so we just go right to the walls. And I heard that about GUS, which is the Galactic Universal Shuttle, which is what they called, the whistleblower who was talking about, called the Roswell craft. They called it GUS. And GUS is actually like a shuttlecraft, and GUS goes up to this larger craft that holds 1 million beings and all their, their stuff, their city and everything. And there's 5 of them outside of Mars. Anyway, this is just piecing together all these whistleblowers that I've been talking to for the past 8 years. So what's really going on is very Star Trekian. But we're down here and we have this limited story. We're trying to piece it together and explain it. But if that would just get out there and they'd get over it, we'd be a spacefaring society. But why won't they? You're seeing this. They're not really taking any caution. They're showing you. What do you think that's about, Bruce? Why are they teasing us like that?
Why are they showing me the stuff?
Yeah, why are they showing this stuff? And they're like keeping us in the dark, but they're showing us at the same time. It's like they're teasing us.
Well, I think you're dealing with different agendas, with different groups. As you pointed out, there are multiple groups here interacting with humans and our governments, and that there are just as in our own military, there are there are those that support disclosure and those who do not. Those in the ET groups, some of them support disclosure as well, and this is one of the ways that they have done it. Ever since the contactee movement started, way back in the 50s, where individuals were selected for whatever reason and given this privileged information, and that they then shared with their friends and other people who are interested. And this phenomenon that I became involved in is much along the same lines. One of the things I discovered when I was out there in the field, which is part of my experimenting, was that they were literally reading my mind, and so that they would know when I was opening the shutter of my camera and closing it, and they would make movements of the lights to signify that right after I opened the shutter, they would make a movement of light. And right before I closed the shutter, they would make a movement of the light. And I was wondering, how is this a vibration that is in my camera? And I went and checked that out. There was no significant vibration when I opened up the shutter on my camera. And then I realized that I was talking out loud to my recorder, recording the opening and closing of my shutter and giving the time of the opening and closings. And then when I stopped doing that, the lights continued, and I realized I was thinking the same thing in my head. But when I stopped thinking in self-talk in my head, the lights did not move. They were flatlined. And I've shown these pictures, and these pictures are in my book, that you could see very clearly that the craft, the pilots knew exactly when what I was doing on the ground before I even actually did it. And that's because they were reading my thoughts. And perhaps the most extraordinary example of this was on the 10th of May, 1994. I got the privilege of going up in a MASH-type helicopter, flying across the valley to see the different landscape. A Japanese film crew was there doing a story on Ellen Crystal and her sightings and her book. And I was situated between the pilot on my left and a Japanese cameraman on the right with a huge Betacam strapped to him, and he was strapped into his seat. And the door of the helicopter was taken off so that he could stick the camera outside and didn't have to film through the canopy of this MASH type of helicopter. And as we were flying west across the valley, I wanted to take a picture of a feature on the ground, and I was waiting for us to get a little bit closer and closer so that it would fill the frame of viewfinder on my camera. And when I wanted to take the picture, I went to push the button, and all of a sudden in my head, I get this command, wait. I looked at the pilot, I looked at the cameraman, and neither was talking to me. So not knowing who said this, I went to take another picture. I framed the image that I wanted, went to push the shutter button, and all of a sudden I get the same command, wait. So I waited very carefully, patiently, and then this voice said, now. And I pushed the shutter button, and there was this flash in front of in front of the helicopter, as this craft streaked across the valley in less than a second, traveling at Mach 5, and I got it caught. I captured it right in the frame of the camera. Now, try to take a picture of a bullet coming out of a high-powered rifle without knowing when it's going to be fired. You could take a million pictures and only get maybe one or two shots of the bullet.
Right.
But this time, when we flew, we continued on around to the western side of the valley, and I went to take two more pictures, and each of those times, wait, now. I pushed the button, flash right in front of the helicopter. 3 images that I have. In my book, I show these pictures of the craft just entering the frame of each of the pictures. Now, that by itself not only proves that that there was telepathic communication telling me when to push the shutter button, but that pilot had to know when his craft was going to be in front of my camera lens. He had to know exactly when he was going to be there to tell me when to push that button. Now, that is extraordinary, beyond anything that you can even imagine.
Bruce, you just described my experiences the experiences that I used to have when I used to do photography. I used to have a website called divineimages.org with over 2,100 photographs on there of all kinds of spiritual events, and usually several of those spiritual events, I would get the same exact command. Literally, I get wait or hurry up, or not really hurry up, but you should leave early. And then I remember I don't know if you've ever heard of the WESAC Festival in Mount Shasta, California, but I used to photograph the whole event and then the leadership retreat afterwards. And then the very last time that I photographed there, I was told to leave early, and sure enough, I looked. I was driving down the freeway and the interstate, and I was looking at Mount Shasta, and there were some peculiar clouds there. So I pulled over, took some photographs, and then later on, a few days later, developed the film, and I showed them to a friend of mine, and he goes, "Wow, look at this! There's a ship in this photograph." And I looked at it, and sure enough, there was a big, huge ship. You could only see half of it because it was so big. and it was right next to Mount Shasta. And interesting enough, the negative for that photograph was missing. So I thought, well, that's kind of weird. And so there's like 2 or 3 negatives that were missing from that whole crop of film that I developed. And so anyhow, that was I used to get the same types of commands that you're talking about.
Right, and it's a sobering realization that they have an intelligence that is capable of tapping into universal consciousness and our thinking. That we think our thoughts are private. That unless we tell somebody about what we're thinking, other humans won't know, but they seem to know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I would always get some kind of an interesting photograph when I obeyed their commands or followed their instructions. I would always get some kind of interesting photograph that would come out of it as well, just like you say.
Yeah, exactly. In other words, so that you are being guided by that,
right?
And you're in service not just to them, but to all the rest of us, and being able to bring about this this knowledge of who we're dealing with. Who are they? The evidence I have collected in the field with my magnetic survey, which recorded underground artificial magnetic electromagnetic activity, was that the hot spot is right in an area where there's an ancient Native American sweat lodge, remains of a sweat lodge with an oki and a huge permanent crop circle outlined by a forest where the sweat lodge was located. And that area is extremely unstable magnetically. When I walked across it with my magnetometer, I was getting a very high magnetic readings in that area, and that is where the ships disappear into the ground and come out of the ground. And I realized that the Native Americans that lived there, the Lenape tribe, I believe, back before the settlers were there, that they would see these lights coming out of the ground and going into the ground. They wouldn't know what they were. They had no concept of UFOs, or they thought they were probably spirit lights. And so they wanted to worship them, and they wanted to commune with them. And that's why they built that sweat lodge there. So that by itself would imply that, this phenomena was there for, going back at least 1,000, maybe 2,000 years or more. So they've been here longer than we have, I think.
Right. Yeah, we have stories of how, from the Sumerian records and other texts, how they settled the Americas. That's why we have all those, anomalies, all those, what do you call those? The mountains, the mounds. When I was a kid, like the hiking in the Pennsylvania woods around Pittsburgh, we'd see all those mounds, and we'd go, even as children, we'd go, that's not natural. What's going on there? It was like a mystery for us. But now people like Michael Lee Hill are talking about the mounds and the mound builders, and they were apparently the Anunnaki. So we got the story of the ancient aliens, and now we have this modern era. But I'm wondering what's going on that they're wanting us to know, because they're not being careful, or they're intentionally talking to you, and you're having communication. Do you have any idea what that's about? Do you know who you're talking to? Do you have any sense if they're peaceful, or do they mean you harm, or are they peaceful? What's your concept of this communication?
Well, that is an interesting story. They have weapon capability. There's no question about that. I mean, there are cases now that are coming about where some of these craft have actually shot. The one case I saw on television on Unidentified was a case over in Italy where a helicopter with some people that were involved in studying UFOs was being followed by a disc. And as they approached one of the islands off of Italy, the craft shot a beam, an electromagnetic beam at the rotors, and caused the craft to have to make an emergency landing. And they found these holes in the rotors, and so that was the first documented case that I know of. But there have been others that I've heard of, rumors of our conventional aircraft going into dogfights and being shot down. So they do have weapons capability, but why would they have to harm us? If the stories that you and your husband are studying about the Anunnaki are true, and Sitchin's theory is true, that we were created as a slave species for them, then we are their children, correct?
Right. Yes.
So they would have a certain.
It seems to be there are other factions that have entered the Earth planetary story. You know, we have later species that have come in. Although the Anunnaki have a spaceport at Kumakuku that has extraterrestrials all around on the wall. I've seen pictures of it. I haven't been there. And so it appears that the Sitchin story, and we think that, because we studied, Dr. Lessin and I studied directly with Sitchin, and we think that he wanted to remain credible. So he only focused on one species. But the indicators is that, the Greys were there were some reptilian beings. So that we've had this interplanetary spaceport going, but they may not have been the dominant species. They might have been like they are now, visiting here and there. We don't have the full picture. So we're going into other texts and going back further in time, and it's going to take all of us to pull this together. So that's why I'm very curious about what you're getting now in the modern times. Because it seems like somebody's contacting you. They're not shooting you down. They could probably beam you up and kill you. I guess Travis Walton was accidentally killed when he was hit by the beam, but they put them on the ship. The story is emerging now that he was on ship for 5 days because they were repairing him and bringing him back to life and allowing him to heal.
Right.
So they sent him back to Earth. So you didn't have any kind of contact that was deleterious to your health. And so when I have contact, I'm just excited, exuberant. I feel peace and love. It's like a reunion, a homecoming. You know, I have all these energies around my contact, and I hear all these stories of people having negative contact, and they get beamed up, and the next thing you know, they're fighting in a war in space, and they're fighting these hideous beings, and I go, wow, that's not what's happening to me. I'm working on a project to relocate people that are homeless, those type of things. So, are you aware of any contact beyond the moment? Do you think any of your people, and I don't want to lead the witness, so to speak, but have you had any thoughts now that all this information is coming out about experiencers that you may have been taken aboard a craft or had experiences later? Sometimes you have a sighting, and then 3 days later they, take you out of your home. Have you had anything like that?
I have recovered 9 abduction events during my life.
Wow.
And they go back to age 8 and 9. And one of my most extraordinary abductions that was before I became aware of all of this was in 1981. And I have a whole website dedicated to that called the website Abduction. And I was literally abducted in front of my entire oil well drilling crew at night. And they saw me being taken, 3 small beings carrying me in a beam of light from the mud logging trailer to this disc-shaped craft that was hovering over a cut forest next to the well site. And they saw me being brought back to the trailer. And I had arrived there that early that morning, and the day crew was all excited about what the night crew had told them, that they had seen this disc-shaped craft come over and hover over the field next to the drill site. And I thought, well, I'd never seen a UFO before. I wanted to stay up late that night, and maybe it would come back. Not realizing that I was going to be the one who was abducted. So I put in a full day's, 10 hours of work or 12, whatever it was. I stayed up as late as I could. I was exhausted. And I told my mudloggers that I was going into the one of the bunks in the back of the mudlogging trailer and take a nap. And if the craft comes back, to come and get me. Well, I had a horrific time when I tried to go to sleep. Suddenly, I found something that was just like a nightmare was happening, and I wouldn't be able to recover the details until I was hypnotically regressed in 1995, and that was 14 years later. But what the crew told me is that well, after I was brought back, I found myself in the bed, in hypothermic, and a lot of pain. My joints were aching, my testicles ached. I climbed out of bed wondering what in the world happened. And I put on my boots and I walked into the front of the working part of the mudlogging trailer, and nobody was there. Drilling operations are 24/7, and the crew was not there. And where is everybody? I opened up the mudlogging door and looked out at the rig, and nobody is standing on the drill platform. Nobody is walking around the rig. So I looked to the right, and I saw the entire drill crew huddled together over in the corner of the well site, looking up at the sky. And I looked up in the sky, and here is this craft was with multicolored lights. And as soon as I saw it, it took off. And then I saw my crew coming back, and the mudloggers, when they got back to the trailer, I said, what were you doing? Since I was the president of the company, and they said, we were watching the UFO. And I said, well, why didn't you come and get me? And they said, we did, but you were missing. And we saw you taken, and we saw you brought back. I couldn't believe it. I was freezing. I was in pain, and I was in denial. So I just excused myself and went back to my motel and tried to sleep it off. So then I forgot about it. Even though I wrote in my drilling log, about them seeing the craft, all I had was this recollection of what my mudloggers told me that they actually saw and actually happened. So, and it wasn't until I was regressed hypnotically that I relived the event, what they did to me aboard the ship.
So what did they do to
Who
you?
regressed you, Bruce?
Yeah.
Who was it that regressed you?
Fred Max, who was the first hypnotherapist to regress Betty, Andreas, and Luca, who became part of the Watchers book series.
So his name is Fred Mack, not John Mack. Fred Mack.
Fred Mack, right. And
that's actually the same name, Mack.
Right.
They're not related, huh?
No. One is M-A-C-K, the other is M-A-X. Okay, so they're not the same spelling. And Fred Max and was there with my wife at the time, and I had it all recorded, and we transcribed it, and that is on the website too. And it's quite chilling events, things that happened. It was extremely painful. They were operating on me without anesthesia, of course, and they tried to. One had to climb up on top of me and look in my eyes and hypnotically take away my pain. So I got to see them very clearly who they were, and they were not your Greys. They were not Greys at all. They were a completely different group of what we call wrinkled-browed aliens, with these ridges across their forehead and down their nose, and these circular eyes with circular eyelids, not the eyelids like us that are slit like horizontal or slit like a reptilian, but they were circular that closed like an iris on a camera. And They had a very rough type of skin, but they was white, chalky white. It was, and I've run into those now 4 times in Virginia, and that's the only place I've ever run into them.
So Star Trek was right. We have the ridge-browed species, just like on Star Trek. They have the wrinkled brow.
Right.
So, Bruce, did you get have any implants put in you or taken out of you from all that?
Yes, that group.
Or do you know?
Now that was in 1981, October of 1981. That abduction, well site abduction, occurred. Then, on Thanksgiving of 1993, my wife and I went to visit her mother at Massanutten Village, and her brother had disappeared when one winter night. He was going to go out to do some hiking in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and they found all his clothes, or his jackets and his backpack and everything sitting on the living room floor, but he was gone, missing. They saw his tracks in the snow, and then the tracks disappeared, stopped, and they didn't know where he was. He was missing. And then they found him in the top of the Massanutten ski lift machine room, up at the top of the lift, and some guard found him there, huddled in a corner, and all his clothes had been ripped, and he was delusional. He was screaming, and they took him into the hospital, and they tried to give him some sedatives to calm him down, and he was allergic to them, and he died. And so that was a tragic, big tragedy.
How long was he gone for, Bruce?
About 3 or 4 days. It was a Travis Walton type of event that happened. And my wife at the time, Pat, was also an abductee. She actually she was a Air Force brat, and they moved from Air Force Base to Air Force Base and over to Germany and back to the United States. And in 1958 and 1959, she was with her parents at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, of all places. And she said the aliens abducted her right from that base at night and put her into classroom studies. And so all of this weird stuff that's happening right around us, and most of us are not aware that this stuff is going on. But on the Thanksgiving, we wanted to go up to the top of Massanutten Mountain, up to an outlook there, sky look, and there's a switchback road that goes up the side. And when we got there, it was a nice parking lot and picnic tables, etc. And we parked near the guardrail that overlooked the valley. We could see the ski lodge down below us. And there was a number of different cars there. And then the cars gradually went down the mountain one after another. And we had some quiet. And I said, well, now maybe the UFOs will show up. Little did I know one was showing up right at that moment. And we saw this, what looked like a car coming up the switchback into the parking lot. And the only problem was its headlights, paired headlights, were extremely bright, brighter than anything that a high beams on even a truck would have. And I tried to say, what the heck is that? As it came towards the van, and I could see that it wasn't on the ground. It didn't have any wheels. It was hovering. And I saw this black dome behind the lights. And then there was this flash, and I felt a sting in my eye, and it made me turn my head. And when I went to try to see what was happening again, I got this telepathic message: look straight ahead, do not look at the lights. And I was paralyzed, but I could move my eyes, and I saw in the side view mirror as this shuttlecraft, this top-shaped shuttlecraft, came around and landed right next to the van. We could see the lights dropping down the trunks of the tree, and it produced gravel ridges on the parking lot as well, which I have photographed. They're in my book. And then driver's door was opened, and I felt this bang on the back of my head, and I was knocked out. And when I came to, it was about 30 minutes later, and I had this pre-rehearsed statement. Honey, I think it's getting late. We should go back down to to your mother's house. And she said, yes, I'm for that. And I looked at my clock, and I'd heard it go beep, beep, beep. And the last time I looked at my wristwatch, it was about 8:30, and now it went off every hour, and I realized that the last 30 minutes were missing. And Pat and I then looked to the left of the van, and we saw this shuttle-shaped craft taking off and driving back down the way it had come up, as if it were a car. And the strange thing is that the whole parking lot was lit up from above. So we knew there was another craft there. And when I went to be hypnotically regressed by Fred Max, we wanted to recover that event as well. So Pat was hypnotically regressed, and she recalled being her passenger side door opening, and then taking her and moving her into the shuttlecraft, and the shuttlecraft rose up into the belly of a huge, larger ship, where she was given a medical exam and tests and stuff like that, then brought down and put back into the passenger seat. And she had a needle track in her arm that had blood in it, and she had her panties, which were brand new when she later checked, that were inside out and torn. So she remembered enough of the events to be able to put it all together with the hypnotic regression, and it was the same wrinkled-browed aliens that had abducted me at the well site. Same one.
Do you have
same
a
group.
picture of them? Have you been able to find them?
Yes.
Like go through the internet?
They're in my book.
Can you send me a picture? Can you send me a picture of them since we talked about it?
Sure.
And I'll put it on the website of the wrinkled brown alien. Anyway. Right.
I think I did send you some pictures, but you can see that on my website if you go well site abduction. I believe I give an image of that, and
what's it called again? Well
site abduction.
How you spell that?
Well site, WELLSITE, abduction.
Abduction. Okay. UCC.com, right?
And then my last name, Cornet. Those should, those three words should key into Google to that location.
Okay, so it's well site abduction Cornet keywords. Lots of the sites are called that.
That's that one website. The Massanutten Village one is also. You can do a Massanutten Cornet and get that well site abduction. That abduction on a Massanutten Mountain is also on a website, and it's in my book. So
okay, well site abduction sunstarsolutions.com. Is that it?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I want our listeners to be able to get to this, so they're going to want to know about it. Oh, there it is. Okay, so I'm on the site, and where am I going to see the picture of this alien? Nice site.
Scroll all the way down. Down to where I'm giving the transcript of my regression, and the picture will be there. And Pat was visited by the same wrinkled-browed aliens when she went to Brown University in Rhode Island, and she draws a beautiful picture of one of them. He looks like an old man, basically wrinkled skin and
wrinkled brow.
And Polly in the book,
sounds great.
And Dr. Carla Turner in one of her books, Into the Fringe, I believe, one of the abductions of Polly, she drew these wrinkled-browed aliens as well. She made a drawing of them, and that I put into the book as well.
Okay,
so
I'm going to add that to your page. Okay. Andrew, you've been quiet. Questions, feedback, comments.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you,
Yep.
yes.
Yeah, interesting enough, my computer crashed. Interesting enough, somebody crashed my computer, I should say. All right?
Just now?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay, you're back. So you were gone for a while?
No, I haven't. I've heard everything, but because I can hear you on my speaker and now on my, I switched everything to my phone. Is there feedback going on you now?
No, I'm fine. I don't hear any feedback. How are you, Bruce? How's it sound?
I'm
you hearing
fine.
everything okay?
Yes.
Okay, we're good.
Yeah, okay.
So do you have any questions or comments or feedback from Bruce about what he's covered so far?
Earlier, I was wanting to find. Well, I was wanting to know whether that you said you were gone for 30 minutes. Is that correct?
Yes. On the Massanutten abduction account. Yes.
And you don't recall where you went during that time frame, or you do?
Actually, what I realized when I was hypnotically regressed is that they left me sitting in the driver's seat of my van, and they operated on me there. They hit me in the back of my neck, and Pat said that after the event was over that there was a bruise on the back of my neck, and then I had these two holes underneath my ear canals on either side of my skull, and the holes were oozing blood serum. And later I got an X-ray done, and I show that X-ray on the Massanutten abduction webpage, and there's a hole in my skull underneath the ear canal where they inserted something into my brain.
Wow.
So do you think they put an implant in there? Is that what I hear you saying?
They put. I'm assuming that they put implants into my brain. I have X-rays, CAT scans, and there is something unusual there. So I also have another implant that was put into my optic nerve when I was 8 years old, and then I was retaken at age 9, and they did an exam with a bunch of other kids my same age aboard a circular craft. And I saw equipment there, technology that was, today we have this, have types of X-rays on X-ray tables, and we have computer terminals with monitors and keyboards and all of that. And they had all that stuff back in 1954. Okay.
Wow.
Stuff that was as modern as we have it today. And this little BB-sized implant, which is been tested and found it robs and steals a circular area of information from my retina in my peripheral vision, and constitutes it and sends that information to one of their receivers aboard the ship, and they demonstrated to us kids how that they can see what we're seeing. We're a walking camera, literally. Everything that I saw, they could see. And then later on,
I've experienced that before myself.
Say that again, Andrew?
I said I've experienced that myself as well. When I used to do heavy duty meditations, about 2-3 hours a day, sometimes up to 6 hours in a day. And one time, this was in Texas, right before I left there, some being literally donned my body. Being, I don't know who it was. It freaked me out because all of a sudden there was somebody in my body, and they were looking through my eyes, and whatever I was seeing, they were seeing, and I could tell that there was somebody looking through my eyes. And then another time when this happened, I was with a girlfriend in California, and we went to a Maharaji
gathering, and now that was a lot different because also I know it was him. I know it was Maharaji came into my body and was looking around to his devotees at his devotees for about 10-15 minutes, and but I had this like incredible smile on my face and like this incredible love going through my body, and it was very interesting. And but I could tell it was him looking through my eyes. I know it wasn't just me looking through my eyes, so I know what you're talking about.
And yes, and I've had several occasions of where I've been looking through the alien's eyes, and so that I know they can see through mine, and I can see through theirs. Yes, and when I met two of my hybrid children, it was through Kara, their biological spiritual mother. I was seeing through her eyes where they were. I don't know where they were, whether they're out in a spaceship or an underground base, but it was a modern type of office room that I was seeing. I went walking downtown in Red Bank, New Jersey, and suddenly this telepathic voice said, your daughter, Honora, is back, and she's got your letter. And so I stopped, and suddenly I was seeing through Kara's eyes of Honora, my daughter, reading the letter I had written on my computer. And I had asked a friend in California, how am I going to write to my children? And she said, just type out a letter and it will be sent. And after I typed out my letter, I got this telepathic message, your letter has been received. Nora is not available right now. When she returns, we will give it to her. And I said, holy cow. I mean, this is outrageous. And so I saw them and met them where they were, aboard whatever structure they were in. And both my daughter and my son, hybrid daughter and son, and they're out there in space somewhere. It's pretty amazing. I'm writing a book about all of that.
The letter was sent digitally or physically or both?
It wasn't sent physically. It was electronic to begin with, on my computer. But they took that information right off my computer and printed it out for my daughter, who was actually holding a piece of paper in her hand.
Wow. And that's what I was wondering. So they etherically emailed your letter to her, and it came to her in the physical form as well.
Right. Exactly.
Wow.
So we know little about what's going on in the world.
I literally, and I don't know what the problem is, but I'm blaming you, Bruce. That's all it's to it. Somebody crashed my computer, man. I haven't had this happen in a long time, and I seen it. I literally seen it happen. Like there was like a twitch in my computer, and then also crash. So, but anyhow, go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the other things, I don't know. Have I talked to you, Janet, about my children?
Well, we can say you start from here because this is a different show. You know, something might be new.
Right.
Haven't heard from you before, so it doesn't matter if we're repeating it. But every time we talk about anything, we get more details. So tell us about your children.
Well, I was introduced to my late wife, Bonnie, back in 1981, right before my Wellside abduction. I was at a church Baptist retreat, and I was on the bus, church bus, headed back to Houston, and sitting alone, and this voice started talking to me. I looked around to see who was talking to me, and nobody was talking. And the voice said, "Are you ready to serve God and do whatever He asks you to do?" Well, that was a leading question. And so I said yes, and then the voice said, "There is somebody who needs help. If I bring her to you, will you help her?" And I said, "Yes. When will I meet her?" The voice said, "Before the year is out." Well, she was brought to me from New Jersey down to Houston, and I met her at my dentist's office at a Christmas party that she crashed. A very strange situation. I ended up just bought a brand new house in Houston, and she was having problems with her estranged husband. I said, well, why don't you and your son come and live with me? Which she did. And she was an extraordinary woman. There's a book, a website out there called The Passion of Bonnie, which is about her. And when she died, right before she died, in fact, she told me that a bunch of things that were going to happen, and she taught me how to communicate with her telepathically. And I had never, as a scientist, never had dealt with that subject. And it was very funny because she was bedridden in the last month of her life, and I was coming home late. I decided to stop off and get something at McDonald's because I was too tired to fix dinner. And when I got home, I walked in. She said from the bedroom, "Hi, honey, did you get me my Big Mac with extra pickles and Coke with extra ice?" And I said, "Yes, how did you know?" I asked you for them. So I started playing games with her to see if I could recognize her thoughts in my head, and I got good enough at it. So when she died, she continued to communicate with me. And at her gravesite, this was about, 2 days after she had been buried, my mother and I went to her gravesite in the Garden of Texas Liberty in northwest Houston. And I took my camcorder along to record the area for her family up in the Northeast. And as I was panning the area around her grave, her spirit showed up over her grave on camera. Extraordinary starburst, blue, green, and white aura that it was pulsating to my words, "There's my love, love of my life," etc. And then I was told to telepathically turn off my camcorder. I wish they hadn't told me that, because at that point, a second sun appeared in the overhead cloud. A golden beam of light came down to her spirit over her grave, captured her, and we saw the colors of her spirit rise up in that beam into that second sun. The beam retracted and the sun went out. And my mother exclaimed, "Oh, how beautiful. The sun's breaking through the overhead cloud and sending a sunbeam down to Bonnie's grave." But it was 8:30 in the morning, and the real sun, was just barely coming above the trees to the east. And this second sun was directly over us, and it was certainly not noontime. And it wasn't later until I got the computer technology had advanced to the point where I could capture images and go frame by frame on that video, that I realized that I had captured when I came into that the area where she's buried, a huge cloud over her grave, and out of the side of that cloud, just like you saw, Andrew, was this huge white dome-shaped mothership sticking out of that cloud. So that was the first clue that I got that the spirit of my late wife was, in fact, an ET.
Oh. Wow. No, I hear what you're saying.
And then she continued to communicate with me and tell me about who she was and her name and everything else, what organization. And I've told Janet about that. And that's, for most people, that's going to be hard to believe. Where do you get
not on this
confirmation
show.
like
Not on this show.
Not
We're
on this show.
Yeah, we've been in the bunkers. We know exactly what you're talking about there now, Bruce.
Okay, very good. And but at any rate, she has been my contact, and she is the one who introduced me to my children, our children, that were born before either she or I had lost our virginity. And as she became pregnant at age 17, she was a 17-year-old Jewish virgin when she gave birth to two babies. She became pregnant right after I had been abducted for a sperm sample, and then she was trying to hide her pregnancy from her fiancé, who wanted to marry a virgin. What is she going to tell him? He's not going to believe that she was artificially impregnated. And so 4 months into her pregnancy, she woke up with her belly flat, blood between her legs, and her hymen broken, but no fetus or afterbirth on the bed sheets. And that was on August 1st, 1967. And then when they were 27 years old, I met them in astronaut suits, holographically projected from space over my bed. And I was told telepathically to study the two humans. There was one alien in a different type of spacesuit, and the two humans. And one was a woman, one was a man. And the man had a beard, and it was very strange. When the vision was over, I woke my wife and to tell her about this, and she said, I woke her in the middle of a dream of me meeting my children. And I said, well, they didn't tell me their names, and she said, in the dream, their names were Nora and Kyle. Holy cow. So she was involved in this as well. And she started to disbelieve me, and thinking I really was going crazy. But that would happen on Saturday morning when I saw my children for the first time. And then on Monday, Pat was coming home from New York City on the bus. She had a window seat, and she saw this reflection of a woman staring at her. She looked around to see who was staring at her, and nobody matched the image in the window. Then the image in the window of a beautiful woman started to telepathically talk to her and said, hi, Pat. I'm Nora. I'm your husband's daughter. He is not going crazy. And she came running into the house when she got home. She was so excited. She grabbed me around, hugged me, and said, I saw Nora. I saw Nora. And so she could believe it. And then I had this strange idea that I needed to go to Princeton University because Bonnie had said that she had graduated from Princeton University, and she never went to college. So why would she tell me that she had graduated from Princeton? Because she was laying down a clue for later on. So I went to Princeton and looked through the yearbooks looking for a picture of the woman I saw in that spacesuit. Finally, I found it, but her name was Tamara, not Honora, and she was born 33 days before Honora and Kyle were born to a surrogate mother in Ohio. So I took copies of that picture with other women in the yearbook, made up a photo lineup. And when Pat got home, I asked her, are there anyone here in these pictures that you can, looks familiar? When she got to the picture of Tamara, she pointed to it and said, I will never forget that face. And I said, is this the woman you saw reflection in the bus window? And she said, yes. And I said, oh my God, Honora and Tamara are identical twins. And so that's how I got to discover my 3 children, all born before either Bonnie or I had lost our virginity.
Wow. So they do that, though. They take our sperm and eggs and they combine us, and they can combine us with more than 2 parents. You could have a hybrid child that has DNA from different species, many different parents, because they want certain qualities in these children. And I think they're trying to create something that has a higher survival rate or might be able to endure whatever the earth changes we're going through and the environmental changes.
Yep, we're going through a new iteration of humans with there are new species or variations on the Homo sapiens already in existence. We tend to call them star children. They're extremely bright.
Yeah,
wow.
I think it was Zoom that the people from Zoom that canceled my that literally they uninstalled Zoom out of my computer and everything's gone. The video that we're shooting from this interview is gone as well. Interesting.
Oh wow!
The crash.
Bruce, I'm blaming you. There you go. Thank you. No, it says that you're only allowed 40 minutes of recording, so that's probably why they did that. But that's not cool either. But that's the point.
Okay, so that's Go ahead.
Your daughters. You had twin daughters, and you didn't know it.
Right. Yep.
You met them.
No, only through the vision and through through the eyes of Kara when they're out somewhere off Earth, and I've seen through their eyes and they've seen through my eyes and all of that stuff. But for some reason, there is a rule that we cannot physically meet. I don't know why, what the problem is. I do know with Tamara, who got married after she graduated from Princeton University, and now has 5 children. She's living in a small town in Ohio, and so apparently they want her to just live a normal life without any involvement, and that's why I've been prevented from having anything more than a phone conversation with her, and that was it.
That was it. Hey guys, can you carry on while I take a little potty break? I'll be right back. Keep on talking. Don't let me stop you. I'll be right back.
Okay, so keep on talking, huh? Well, at any rate, I hope that maybe before I die, I will get to meet them in person on Earth. That would be an extraordinary experience for me. And then I could ask them a lot of questions. Of course, maybe the world is not ready for this, because one of the things that could be done is through a paternity test. I could determine whether or not Tamara and thereby also Honora and Kyle are my biological children. And that would really screw things up in our concept of all of this. It would prove that the ETs are messing with our DNA. And that may be too sensitive a subject to be disclosed at this time.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. What's going on?
Okay. I don't know. Janet, are you still there?
She said she had to go do
booted
something.
off of she got booted off of Blog Talk Radio, I think. Janet, are you still there?
Must have been talking
No,
about
we're okay.
taboo
She'll be
subject.
back.
Right.
What's that?
Is this show still on the air, so to speak, or not?
Yeah,
I
think we're still on the air, so I think we're good. But she just needs to dial back in. That's all. So
right.
Yeah. Whenever I remember when I used to do my radio shows, my other radio shows, and I'd bring in people that had sensitive information. And I always, it was the same thing. They'd kick me off of Blog Talk Radio. They'd kick me off a conference call, or something would happen. And I don't know. I think this is the second or third time that they crashed my computer. So, it's just like that. Janet, are you still here? Are you back?
No, she's not back. Wow.
Yeah, well, that's okay.
What's going on? How old are you?
Here, let me text her real quick. See if she's still around. But now where are you at, Bruce?
I'm in El Paso, Texas, and you're where?
Oh, you're in El Paso. Okay.
Yes.
Now, you've been living there for how long?
Oh, since 2004.
Oh, so for a few years. 15 years. That's a good time. And you live there with your wife, your kids, or who do you live there with?
Well, I did come here, and I ended up with a woman, and we're still very close. And she's hated El Paso and wanted to move out of it, and I couldn't. And so she moved up to Bigfoot country in Washington State, and then she met a Canadian and wanted to marry him. And she's been living in Nova Scotia, Canada, for a while, and now she's getting divorced from him, and she wants to come back and see if there's a possibility we can get back together, because she's tired of dealing with men who mistreat women.
Right. So, Janet, are you back yet?
I just got back. Okay. I was waiting for you to finish your sentence. So, did you miss me? So, who's treating?
Yeah. Did you get booted?
No, I had to go to the bathroom. I'm sorry. I drank too much tea earlier
I thought
today.
you got booted.
No, I had to go. Yeah. I had to go to the bathroom. I said, "Excuse me, I'll be right back." I normally can make it for 2 hours, but I was drinking a lot of tea today. It wasn't so
She wasn't booted. Yeah. She was bootied.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So what happened? What happened? So somebody wasn't being treated right by men, or something. That's what I heard.
Well,
he was saying that he's been married. He lives in El Paso, Texas now, and he was living with a woman, and then she took off, and she was complaining that she's been mistreated. Mistreated and misunderstood. Oh, poor baby.
I hear that all the time. Yeah. Yes.
Yep. We've always remained close and loving, and she wants to now try us to get back together, but she doesn't want to come back to El Paso. So she's pretty well established up there in Canada, getting her citizenship. She's wondering if I can be interested in moving up there and living with her in Canada. So that'll be an interesting development if that happens.
What do you think about that?
I like Nova Scotia. Nova Scotia has a lot of rocks that I have studied and been to many times. So I would very much enjoy being there. Yeah. Of course, a lot of things are happening in Nova Scotia, like Oak Island mystery and all of that other stuff. So, Nova Scotia means New Scotland. So it has a lot of history. Yeah.
What is the temperature like, the climate?
It's a maritime climate. It's milder than further inland, but it's obviously colder than a year round in El Paso. It was just too hot for her down here, too dry.
Yeah, I couldn't do it.
Now what, Bruce? Now what happens to Bruce now? Are you still being contacted? Do you have the events that you're speaking at? What happens to Bruce now?
Well, after I got a job at NIDS in Las Vegas. Do you know what NIDS is?
No,
this was in 2004. National Institute for Discovery Science. It was owned by Robert Bigelow, the billionaire, in budget suites. And I worked for 4 months there before he shut down NIDS. And then it was Sharon, it's the woman we were talking about. She saved me. We had become friends when I was there, and she invited me to come live with her in El Paso, which I did. And we eventually got married. And I couldn't have any children of my own, but she had 3 kids of hers. So everything was fine for a while. And then things started, but I never had a sighting. After I crossed the Mississippi going west, and I didn't have a sighting until May of this year. And was it May or it's March 6th when I saw a dish-shaped craft hovering over Fort Bliss and the Biggs Army Airfield when I was driving with a friend who was driving down the Patriot Freeway, and I couldn't believe my eyes. When I first caught attention, there was this jet that was taking off from Biggs Field like a bat out of hell. And as the jet climbed steeply and then began to bank very severely, doing almost a U-turn, and I looked at him, why is that jet making such a steep climb and a turn? And I looked ahead of it, and here was this disc hovering above the airfield. And the jet was headed directly for an interception. And I pulled out my camcorder, my cell phone, and tried to get a picture of it. And just as I pushed the button on the camera, both the jet and the disc vanished, just poof. Of course, I have no way of proving that this is what happened, but the people I've talked to who are familiar with similar types of events, that ends up being my most recent and only sighting since I left the East Coast.
When was that?
Back in 2003. Pardon?
2003. 2003.
The end of
September, October.
I moved. We moved I moved in January of 2004, but I'd gotten a job at NIDS in September, October, and November of 2003. And so, at any rate, that was an experience, and that's now I'm very much with this book. Hopefully, it will get more people asking questions, as you are, about what in the world was I doing in the Wallkill River Valley and Hudson Valley of New York. Now the world can find out by buying my book.
A lot of people have reported sightings in Hudson Valley in New York. So,
and there's a reason. There's an underground alien base there. It's active. You know, it isn't going to go away. It's the people are still seeing. I've been in touch with friends that live there, still live in the area, and they said, "Oh yes, we've been getting sightings, still getting sightings."
Have you interviewed them? Have you, connected the dots and compared notes with the other people that are still seeing things? Like bringing
they
into the
don't
modern
do things
era.
on a regular basis. They're not doing things as regularly as I did. I mean, I went out 2 and sometimes 3 times a week when I was living there at night after work. And so I had a very intense interaction with the neighbors there underground. And but ever since then, 97, the activity just sort of dropped off to almost zero. And Cheryl Costa and Linda Costa, who have been written this book, a desk side reference manual for UFOs, and they statistically document all of the sightings across the United States back to the 40s. And what is amazing
she did
about
a whole thing with data and collected it and put it all together and organized it and so forth.
And she shows that in 97, the activity shifted from the Pine Bush area over to Long Island. And suddenly that area, all the activity was being seen over in Long Island. So we don't know why the activity shifted, but you can see it in the statistics.
Interesting.
I interviewed Cheryl about 2 years ago. I think she's at the MUFON conference symposium this weekend out in California. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
But
she said she was going there.
She's done several presentations.
She does wonderful work, and we don't have too many other people that do that kind of work, and it's very badly needed. We have the different reporting agencies like Newfork and NICAP and all of those, and George Filer's files, but they only get a small percentage of the sightings that are actually happening. Cheryl did a statistical analysis based on information on not just reports but interviews, finding out just how many people who see something actually report it, and maybe 1 in 100 will actually report it. So, and what percentage of people in the United States actually have sightings? Well, the estimate, is a lot higher than what is actually happening.
Great.
So now, what do you want to happen, Bruce, at this point? Do you want to just be abducted and taken to some other planet, and that's where you live the rest of your days? What do you want to happen now?
Actually, I would like to meet my children. I'd like to get to know them, and I'd like to get to know what the heck's going on here. Now, unfortunately, I also know that once I do know, I can't tell anybody else. So it'll have to be something that satisfies my curiosity rather than will be part of any larger disclosure. So I'm doing the disclosing now. I have a number of different projects and books in the works that have been, my field work out in the Wallkill River Valley in the 1990s turned up extraordinary discoveries, archaeological discoveries. And I need to report on those because right now we're pushing back in time the oldest technological civilizations. We're beginning to recognize that our recorded history or the textbook history of humanity is wrong, that there were civilizations on Earth long before the ice ages ended, and that these civilizations, we got names that have been passed down orally, such as, Atlantis and Maria and Pan and all of those. And, of course, the scientific community just dismissed them as myth. And now we're finding more and more evidence that they may all be true. So when were these civilizations? When did they exist? And how are we connected to them? That is the big question right now in my mind.
Exactly. So if those aliens became public domain, what do you think would happen, Bruce? How do you think the public would react? How do you think the aliens would react or act?
If people generally accept it, and we still have people that believe that the Earth is flat, so you're never going to get 100%, not even maybe 70%. But you're still going to have a majority of humans that will accept the existence of ETs, and maybe they'll just start making their parents known. I've run into a bunch of them that are walking in human skin. They look just like us.
Great.
And probably only through a DNA analysis would we be able to tell that they're not us directly, maybe related to us. But they walk among us, and they have infiltrated our government and everything else. So the thing that those in control don't want the public to know is who they really are. See, that's what I think where we're headed, is to finding out who's been arranging all of these national governments and wars between governments, and why. I suspect that
like there's
much
somebody that does want it to know. There's somebody that does want us to know. That's why we have more. I have so many experiencers contacting me now. It's amazing. And I'm, that's why I just really booked the last 2 months solid. I've been doing shows 5, 6, 7 days a week sometimes just to try to document it all, because there's so many people that are waking up and realizing that maybe that incident they had where they saw the lights in the sky was actually more. And I'm not introducing ideas in people, but they're coming to these realizations and they're starting to report them, and they go and do hypnosis and they get more information. And then we have the people that are researching like the ancient aliens. And so
right.
there's a lot of documentation in the literature about how Enki sent his people to the Americas, and Thoth and Nagashita came here, and actually Marduk came in a previous time, and then if you correlate that with the Mormons, who have the story that there were wars over in the Americas, and there were cities with tons of people, and then recently in South America they did the sonar, and they discovered a city that's as big as New York City. It was under the jungle. So all this stuff is coming out. So I think that your reservations about, you know, things negative happening if you get it out there, I think that's just going away by the volume of information coming out all at once.
Ancient Aliens is doing an amazing job at this, even though they may not have all the facts correct. Enough of it is correct to educate people, and it's only going to be through education that our viewpoints are going to change.
Right, they're creating awareness, and this awareness is like it's getting to the point where, what, you don't believe in UFOs? I mean, it's starting to reverse. Oh, you're crazy. You think we're the only species in existence, you know? So that's happening. And then we had the government, like you said recently, opened up and said, I guess they had some concerns that they were afraid of getting attacked or they were getting buzzed. And so they wanted the government. They briefed the president, they briefed Trump, and several of the senators. Did you hear about that? There was, I guess, a couple weeks ago now.
The only way they can get the Congress to fund more for this study and to make it, obvious. In other words, not covered up like Blue Book, is to convince those in government, in control, that we need to know what the technology is, who's behind it, and why are they flying in our atmosphere? What's the objective? And the only way they can do it is by painting them as a threat. That's the only thing that's going to get them, the humans, off their butts and be willing to pull out their checkbooks and pay for this. Look what Trump has already done with creating the Space Force. I mean, don't you think that is one step closer to recognizing ET?
Well, one of the theories is that that's coming out because it already exists, so they want to prepare people and say, yeah, that was going on all along. That's one of the theories. And we do have a massive, secret space program that's coming out with different whistleblowers. So, yeah, I think it might be part of covering your butt, because if you're going to reveal this and then it's like, you didn't tell us, right? Massive deception. But anyway, nobody cares. Everything's changing every day. It doesn't matter. It changes so fast every day. But we're thinking today is going to be so different tomorrow, because there's no stopping it. It's like an avalanche of information. There's just no stopping it now.
Yes. And
we have just a couple minutes, so let's start to wrap this up. Sorry to interrupt you, but I just wanted you to be aware that we only have about 8 minutes left, so we need to start concluding. Okay, go ahead.
It's just that I think we're at a turning point right now, a major one, and that something is happening and going to happen. I keep on hearing all these stories of people who have alleged to have contact with ETs, that we are going to have some things that happen that are going to be very disruptive of our world or national sovereignties and peace. But, if you go back and look at history, we are repeating history. The telltale signs of events that were happening on the world scale before World War I and then before World War II, et cetera, et cetera. We can see that we're dealing with a very volatile situation that could deteriorate in an instant. And I keep on hearing these stories about how ET is not going to let us destroy this planet. Well, if they're living on it, living underground in it, they're not going to want their world to be destroyed either, are they?
Right. They might very well have an investment here. There's a couple of theories part of there's one theory where they want us to destroy because they want the natural resources, the gold, all the minerals. They want to clear the planet of humans who are in their way. That's one theory. But there's all these theories out there. I'm not sure exactly what's going to emerge. I'm holding in my consciousness the positive outcome because I think consciousness does affect it. Andrew, a final word from you. We're running out of time.
No, I want to thank you for allowing me to come on here and talk to you, Bruce and Janet. And I think we have an amazing future ahead of us. Believe it or not, the time travelers have stated that in 2028 we legalize time travel, and then the aliens become public domain. They do the first contact right about then as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how this is all going to unfold.
I'm certainly hoping that's true. Go ahead.
The funny thing that about all of this is when we look back in hindsight, we love to talk about what we've accomplished as humans. I mean, the 50th anniversary of the moon landing is one major example of that. These are the first humans to walk on the moon. Well, won't it be a letdown if we find out that humans have been living on the moon for a long time?
I think it'll be exciting if we find that out.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I think it's time we
good.
wrap this up, and I want to thank you so much, Bruce, for coming on again, and good luck with your book, and I hope you get plenty of speaking engagements, and I'm looking forward to your other books, and when you get them together, contact me, and we'll have you back to do another episode. And thank you, Andrew Aloha, for coming on as my co-host today. I've had a wonderful time. And thank you, listeners. I hope that you have enjoyed yourself and that you'll come back again to our show on Friday, which we're going to feature Seb Talk on the 26th of July. Seb Talk. She's an experiencer. Okay, much love and blessings and aloha. And this is Planet of Peace by Jaiya Earthchild.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Unite this
leaders of our nation, are they wise as well as strong, or boys in imitation, pointing that he's God, threatening the future, endangering us all? The people of all nations are united to end all war, for we are one human family, sharing one home. Planet of peace, planet of This session is no longer being recorded.